have Kettle, a communication and social media expert, speaker, author, trainer, and mentor. She has created millions of words and thousands of pieces of content over the last 20 years for organisations including Microsoft, the Brisbane Festival, Medibank, and the Queensland Government. Her career started as a conference organiser when the internet was new, and the bulk of the content she created was printed in the form of brochure or direct mail delivered by the postie. Today she works closely with CEOs, thought leaders, associations and businesses to help them communicate effectively and authentically using social media and other digital channels so they attract, retain and engage their customers and clients. Today Mel is talking about creating compelling content that cuts through the clutter.
Thanks very much. Alrighty, my Twitter handle, which I inconveniently forgot to put up on the slide, is @MelKettle, if you're wanting to tweet or Instagram anything. So I was having a look yesterday and thinking, what's actually the definition of content? Because content today has quite a different meaning to what content used to have. And I found this little definition, that it's a state of peaceful happiness. Now, I don't know about you, but it's very rare that I'm in a state of peaceful happiness when I'm creating content, especially for a client when they're at the 27th revision of something that's about 300 words long. So then I looked a bit further down the list on definitions of content, and I saw this one. The things that are held or included in something. But I particularly liked the little example underneath. Who creates content with alcohol? I cannot be the only one. But then I kept on looking, and the very last definition of content was information made available by a website or other electronic medium, which made me think, were the first 10 years of my career completely wasted? Because none of that content went on the internet, because the internet didn't exist. So when we're creating content, there's a few things we need to think about because we want it to be compelling and we don't want it to be bland and boring like this. So I say to my clients that creating great content is like cooking a meal. You don't want it to be bland and tasteless because you forgot to add the salt. You want it to be... You want it to be vibrant and colourful. And you want... That looks pretty compelling to eat, doesn't it? Compared to the last one that you just sort of go, meh. So you've got to think about these things. But even more importantly, hang on, use the little down arrow, which also isn't working. What's wrong? Okay, tech. Oh, there we go. Oh, then we've gone too far. Our attention spans today are shorter than goldfish, and the attention span of a goldfish is approximately 7 seconds. So there's a lot that we need to think about when we're creating content that's going to be compelling so that it cuts through the clutter. Because, as you know, we are bombarded with messages. Before you even get up in the morning, my husband's alarm on his phone plays a song, it plays Killer Queen, and I just lie there and think, oh, and then I think, oh, they're coming to Brisbane next year on the 24th of February, I'll go to that. Oh, no I won't, because I won't be here, because I'll be in Sydney. Oh, I need to book my flights. Oh, where am I going to stay? Oh, what am I going for? And, you know, I haven't even gotten out of bed or even really woken up. And I'm thinking about all these messages from one song. So think about how when your clients and your target market are looking to find you, how are they going to do that? How is what you are creating going to resonate with them when we've got these many options in terms of how we can be sharing our content? So I want to talk about how we can create contagious content. This is a picture of the H1N1 virus, one of the most contagious things around, so I thought it was quite compelling. But when we're creating our content, we also need to be mindful not only that people are having shorter attention spans than ever, but that people are glued to their phone. And the average person checks their phone 1,500 times a week. So you need to make sure that your content is really visual when people are looking at it on a teeny-weeny little screen, this size and often smaller. So think about the colours that you use. Think about the fonts that you use. Think about the mediums in which you share that content. Do you use Twitter? Do you use Instagram? Do you use Facebook? Do you use words, or do you use pictures? Or are you using video? And they're the things I want to talk about today. So the first thing that we need to think about is, how do you tell a story? Because people relate to stories far more than they relate to facts and figures. So how can you create content that shares the story of your brand, of your customers, of your purpose? What is your why, and how can you share that? Who was in the session that Nick gave earlier? And he talked about the about page. Who has an about page that says, I do this, and I do this, and I'm guilty of that? Whereas who has an about page that says, this is my experience and this is how I can help you because I've seen these things in my business or in my practice? Yeah, hands higher. So those of you that have about pages all about you, talk to the people whose hands are up, because they have about pages that are about their customers and their clients. They know the customer's problem and they offer the solution, or they demonstrate that they know the solution to help it. But it can be stories about social things as well. This was an absolutely fantastic little story that I saw the other day on Facebook. Has anyone seen this on Facebook? It's been shared something like 460,000 times in the less than a week that it's been on Facebook. It's this guy who, he lives in somewhere in the south in the US, and he went on a date night with his wife. But to make it a bit more interesting, they went to the local Goodwill store, gave themselves each a $10 budget and bought the cheesiest, trashiest outfit they could find, went out for dinner, called themselves Roger and Ethel, not their real names, have since been having hate mail from Rogers and Ethels. But he says, since this post has gone viral, I thought I'd write a blog post about it. So he's written a blog post, and it's absolutely fantastic, but it's their story. Now, it's easier to tell a story and to tell your story when you're an individual, but we're all individuals, whether we're in business or not. And people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So how can you get people to trust you? Tell your story. Does that make sense? Yeah. This is one of my absolute favourite business examples of a story. This is pretty much exactly what you think. Picture tells 1,000 words. Hotel Z is a small hotel chain in Victoria, Canada, in British Columbia. The Victorian arm of Hotel Z thought, can we do a bit more interestingly for Valentine's Day this year? So they had a special. They had a nooner special. You could book a room between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. and pay, I think, either $59 or $79 for the week leading up to Valentine's Day. So you could spend that special time with your special someone if you didn't have time to do it in the evening, or if your special someone wasn't that special someone you went home to. Okay, before it wouldn't go, now it's going when I'm not pushing the button. They had so much media coverage around the world with this. They did it last year for the first time, they did it this year again. They're booked out, as you can imagine. Pretty much the moment they announce it, it's sold out. But they wanted to tell a story. And their brand is, you know, they position themselves as being quirky and being fun. And so they thought, what can we do for our market that's a little bit quirky and a little bit fun? And a little bit irreverent, because their motto is, we rebel against the ordinary. So they really know their values, and they really share their values through their story with this, and through the visuals that they've created. I absolutely just love this picture, that poor guy waiting on the bed, and his wife's just too busy voyeuristically checking in to see what's happening next door. It probably doesn't hurt that Victoria is known as the romance capital of Canada. Has anyone been there? It's incredibly beautiful and it's very romantic. The next thing we need to think about to create compelling content is be visual. How can you use images? A picture tells 1,000 words. Social Media Examiner every year in the US do a survey of marketers, marketing professionals, and this year they surveyed between, I think, about 3,500 marketing professionals from around the world, both small business owners like myself through to the chief marketing officers of major multinational corporations. And for the first time ever, visual content was deemed to be more important than any other kind of content, beating out blogging for the first time in the 9 years that they've been doing this survey. So think about how can you incorporate more visuals in your content, particularly given a lot of it's looked at on this little screen. Posts with images are 40 times more likely to be shared on Twitter and produce a significant higher level of engagement than text-only posts. And that's the same for Facebook as well. So there's a few things that you need to think about when you're using visuals. You need to think about, where do you get the image? I take most of my own images. The ones I don't take, I buy. There's free tools you can use. Some of my favourites are Pixabay and Unsplash. If you're looking for things a bit different, Unsplash is great. If you've got a budget, then look at things like Shutterstock. But ideally, if you want to be creating unique, original content, you need to be creating your own images. If you're a really small business or you don't have a lot of budget for a project, like mine and a lot of my clients, there's tools like Canva and Easel that can really help you create fantastic content with images. So both of them have a free option, both of them have a paid option. I know with Canva, if you use the paid option, which is about $15 to $20 a month, you can upload your own branding and your own images and your own logo. So you can upload your own fonts, your own colours and your own logos and just pull them in. And you create a suite of your personal brand or your business branding materials that you can just access all the time. It's such a huge time saver. And they've got set up for creating infographics as well as creating visuals for pretty much every kind of size image you can imagine, whether it's a Facebook ad or a Pinterest image. So you just drop and drag, type your content, type your text overlays, choose your colours, choose your fonts. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't. Hashtag not sponsored, by the way. This is one of my most favourite visual images. Does anybody remember this? It was from the 2013 Super Bowl in the US. The power went out in the stadium and they were blacked out for 34 minutes. In about minute 9, this went up. It went up on Twitter and it went up on Facebook. And this has been shared more than 200,000 times and garnered more than 525 million impressions. What's impressive about that is only about 50 million people watch the Super Bowl around the world on television. This was kind of a perfect storm for Oreo because all the decision makers were in the same place. And so when the stadium blacked out, their creative director from the agency that they use said, we've got an opportunity here, let's get something up and let's get it up now. And so he created this, or somebody in his team created this, and they had to sign off, do you approve? Yes. Do you approve? Yes. Do you approve? Yes. Let's get it up. And it just went crazy because Oreo knew that when people would turn to the internet to find out what was happening when the lights went out in the Super Bowl stadium. The commentators had no idea. People on the TV commentators and the sports commentators didn't have any idea. So everybody was asking on Twitter and on Facebook what's going on. And so this just gave a brief moment of levity in what was a distressing moment for many people. That's a great example of creating something on the fly. One of my favourite Facebook accounts, and you're never going to believe me when I say this, is the ATO, the Australian Tax Office. This is something they put up last week. How clever is that? Now, this was obviously planned because they knew well in advance that Game of Thrones was going to be coming back on TV on the night it did. And so they could prepare. And this is an excellent example of knowing what's happening and creating content in anticipation of an event that they knew an enormous number of people would be interested in. This has been shared, how many times does it say? 612 times, but this was about 4 days ago that I put this up, so it's now been shared more than 1,000 times. The ATO's content is fantastic. Now, they have an in-house designer who does this. He also runs his own agency, so if you're looking for anybody, I can give you his details. And he's Brisbane-based. But he, you know, they work together, and if you just, I don't know if you remember the ATO on Facebook a few years ago, but it's a whole different place today. Their content is amazing, it's topical, it's relevant, but more importantly than that, they're engaging. So you can see the top question, the second one is a response from the ATO, and they really actively engage with their customers. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how compelling your content is, if you don't have a reputation for actually engaging and talking to the people that you're creating that content for, you may as well just not even bother creating it. And the third thing that you need to be aware of when creating great content is creating video. Video content is the driving determinant behind search traffic in the United States. YouTube is the second biggest search engine after Google, and it has been for years and years and years. Who's creating video content? Who's doing pre-recorded? And who's doing Facebook Live and live video? So you've got some homework. You can tag me in. I would like to see, oh man, go back. I would like to see you all creating a Facebook Live at some stage in the next week. Doesn't need to be sophisticated and it doesn't need to be fancy. There's a few ways you can do it. Facebook make it pretty easy now because you can create Facebook Live from a desktop, but if you're out and about, you can just use your little portable tripod, your little camera thingy that I swiped off a selfie stick that I was given and I've never used, clip your phone in and buy a Rode mic so that you've got good sound. Plug this into your phone, clip it onto your lapel, set it up and talk. Just remember, if you're looking at the front-facing camera when you're recording Facebook Live, if you show anything that's got words, or if you're wearing a shirt with a logo, it will appear backwards to the audience. I learned that one the hard way. But it's a lot easier to watch yourself, or to see what you're doing and to check that you're in frame. But this is such an easy setup. This cost about $8. This cost about $50, just on eBay. There's no excuse. It is so easy today to create really high quality video on a smartphone and then edit it on your smartphone. You can edit it using QuickTime on an iPhone, and there's other free software, the name of which I've completely forgotten, but I've got it written down, so ask me later and I can tell you if you're on an Android. There's just no excuse. 4 times as many people would rather watch a video about how something works than read a product description. So if you are creating something and you need, if your business involves explaining work, why are you writing it down? Show a video. People are visual and people understand things far more quickly and easily when they're shown something rather than reading something. And if you don't believe me, think about the last time you put an IKEA table together and you were reading instructions. How much easier is it to look at a video of somebody else doing it? The other thing you need to remember is that 85% of videos on Facebook are watched without sound. So make sure that you've got subtitles on there so people can follow along and see what it is you're trying to say. And if you do need them to have sound, make that first slide something that says, turn the volume up. You've got to tell people. Or if it's the sound that, you know, it might not be G-rated and it might not be appropriate for the workplace, say that on that first slide as well. Because you really don't want to be responsible for a client losing their job if you're showing them something that might not be appropriate for other people in the workforce. In terms of getting organic reach versus paid reach on Facebook, Facebook rewards people who create video content. So if you create video content, you are far more likely to have that content seen by people who like your Facebook page than if you just create static content. And if you create Facebook Live, you are more likely again. And the thing that you need to remember with the Facebook algorithm is that Facebook rewards great content. Doesn't matter how many times a day you post, it doesn't matter what time of day you post, Facebook rewards great content. However, having said it doesn't matter what time of day you post, you still need to know what time of day your audience is there. So if you're marketing to mums, don't be posting all your content at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're not going to see it. They're going to see content after 7:30 at night when the kids are in bed, dinner's been served and the dishes are done. Or they're going to be looking for new content first thing in the morning while they're still lying in bed waiting to hear that first cry of, "Mum, I need a glass of water," or "Mum, I need to go to the toilet." So just be aware of when your customers are using social media. Has everyone seen this? Oh, come on, it's on my screen. Okay. Has everybody seen the Chewbacca Mum video? Yes. Which will eventually come up? Yeah? Yeah? Thanks. How great is that? Seriously? Excellent. Oh, we don't need to hear you. Oh, well, we're not going to hear her, so that's good because I haven't got the sound plugged in. Sorry. Just Google Chewbacca Mum. What I love about her is that you can see the stats here. This has been shared 3.3 million times, at least. It's had 167 million views. It's probably had closer to 180 million views now because I did put this slide up about a month ago. She's appeared on James Corden, on Good Morning America, and she's crafted a career for herself out of this. What is so fantastic about this, and I do encourage you to watch it if you haven't seen it, is that she is just so likable and clearly having fun and just so herself. And that's what your videos need to be. They need to show your personality and they need to tell your story. Another Facebook page that does video absolutely brilliantly is Tasty. Now, Tasty is owned by BuzzFeed, so they do have good resources behind them, but each of their videos is under 3 minutes and it's a recipe of how to make something. Their success is because they've condensed snackable content, which is what people today, particularly those under the age of 30, want. So if you're marketing, or if your target market is under 30, think about how can you create snackable content that will compel them to watch. And more importantly than watching, will compel them to act. This is one of my, this is Nathan Chan's founder, Instagram page. He creates inspiring content. He's got 1 million followers on his Instagram page. And this is what it all looks like. A couple of pictures of his latest mag and it's inspiring quotes. If you're looking for some help with Instagram, he also wrote an absolutely brilliant resource on how he gained 1 million followers on Instagram, and it's free on the founder website. And the other thing you need to think about is how can you be authentic? Who else went to see Adele in Brisbane? And who went to the Sunday night show where she danced around on stage because there were massive big moths that were flying into her? Did you not love her a little bit more? I know I did. But being authentic means being real. It's doing what you promise, it's listening to your audience, it's being responsive, being honest about what the capabilities and the limitations of your products and services, and more importantly, if you make a mistake, own it. Don't be one of those businesses that makes a mistake and tries to cover it up. And once you've created your piece of content, what are you going to do with it? This is a great example. Taco Bell in the US, these are all the ingredients they use. And yet this is a snapshot just of their burritos. This is about 1/3 of their burrito range. So they've got 15 ingredients and they create something like 500 different types of product with these 15 ingredients. So think about what can you do with your content once you've created it. If you've written a blog post, how can you convert it into a podcast, into a slide share, into snippets for Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn? Where else can you share it? And then how can you mash it up a bit? You know, video on Facebook is great, but one of my absolute favourite examples of content that's been mashed up is this. We've all been to stations and shopping centres and airports where you see these billboards. Well, this billboard, absolutely love this. I'll put the link in my notes so you can have a look at the video. But this guy is in a town in Switzerland and he is live streaming through this billboard to encourage people to come to his town for the day. It's an hour out of Zurich. This is in Zurich station, and he talks to them. And he says, hey, you. And they're like, me? And he's like, yeah, you. Come to my town for the day. It's an hour away. There's a mother with a child. He says, we've got childcare. There's a tourist or a young guy with a surfboard. He's like, come up to the mountains for the day instead of going surfing. Don't quite know where you go surfing if you're in Zurich, but it's a whole other issue. And when they say, yes, I'd love to come, he prints them out a ticket that spits out the bottom, and he says, the train's in 15 minutes. If you hurry, you can catch it. And then, spoiler alert, the end of the video, he's live streaming still, but with some of the people from the station who he encouraged to come and see him for the day. It's such a great way of creating content. And it would not have been all that expensive for the tourism board of this town. Think about how can you do things that are compelling. I want to go to that town. I want to meet this guy. I want to go to Zurich train station and see this in action. Think about how can you create more content like that. But at the end of the day, if you've got no ideas and you're stuck, create a cat meme. Because they always get shared. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. Really thought-provoking.
Thanks.
Are there any questions for Mel?
I'm around, so if you have any questions later today that you think of later, just come and find me. Or you can contact me.
One of the biggest things with social media and creating content is obviously you need to plan it out to everybody, but the other side is actually commit and actually get up with time, and that's
Yep.
something that a lot of businesses don't have, which is time.
Yeah, so I work with a lot of associations and they are very time poor and they're often volunteer driven. So I say to them, sit down and, I work with them to create a content calendar and we map out the year or at least we map out the next quarter. And one of the things that I find works really well is if you theme each month and if you just have a broad idea of what it is that you're going to talk about each day or each week. Now, depending on the size of your business, you certainly don't need to be creating content to share 26 times a day across 11 different platforms. Choose one platform where your market is and do it well. And you need, and as Damien said, you do need to be consistent. Now, consistency doesn't mean 6 times a day on Facebook. It might just mean twice a week. But you have to have that consistency because your customers and your market will expect that of you once you start doing something. Yeah.
Hi. I was just wondering, you talked earlier about Android editing software.
Yeah.
And I was wondering whether or not you had those.
I do. I'll have to get back to you. Actually, I've got a little cheat sheet that you're welcome to on how to create great video. And I talk about the hardware and the software that you need. So if you want that, just flick me an email or message me on Twitter with your email address and I'll email it to you later.
Following on to being consistent in scheduling your content, one of the things that I hear from clients and things is that when I see something that's with co-schedule, with sleep,
Yeah, no, you're not. Yeah.
You're not, and so that was really disappointing. How do we get around that?
So you're talking Facebook because the other platforms you can't see if they've used a scheduling tool. So my advice to my clients is when you're scheduling Facebook, schedule it through the Facebook page. So that way people can't see that it was scheduled by CoSchedule or Hootsuite or MeetEdgar or anything else. And in case you didn't know, as a user of Facebook, you can click a button that says, I don't want anything to appear in my feed that was scheduled via CoSchedule or MeetEdgar or Buffer or any of the others. So use the native scheduling tool, yeah. Yep.
I've noticed that YouTube's getting a lot more ad focused and more ads and stuff on there. Do you still advise YouTube as the best channel for putting video out there? That's secondary to Facebook Live.
Vimeo is what I recommend for a lot of my clients as well as YouTube, but just have a play. I don't have a huge level of knowledge as to the ad component of YouTube and Vimeo, but I think if you pay, then you don't have the ads. And your viewers don't have the ads if you have a paid subscription. But I'm not sure what that costs.
Last question, Evan.
Yeah.
I was just going to add on to that. So for Vimeo, there's no advertising on there. But you can go for a pro account, which allows you to
Strip out the ads as well.
strip out the ads. You get to upload other content and things like that.
Great.
YouTube Red is a thing, and you get rid of all the ads.
Great. Thanks.
Awesome. If you think of any more questions,
Come and find me.
email us on Twitter, and thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you very much.